It may sound weird, but I do believe it's true that to become aware of the fundamental perception, the fundamental belief that there's something wrong with life or with you, is a mark of spiritual maturity.
Wally.
Look, Detective Miller, do you ever feel that there's something wrong with the universe?
Yeah, sure.
Well, you're right. Things like this shouldn't happen. But in that motel room, they did.
When we don't realize that we're functioning out of a fundamental sense of something being wrong, of life just not feeling right, then we're living in some layer of delusion. And delusion can be stacked many layers deep. We often give off an air of, I've got it figured out. I'm successful. I know who I am. I know where I'm going. I make things happen. I'm effective. I'm a good person. I'm a peaceful person. I'm a spiritual person. I'm a person who cares a lot about the world, about myself, about others. These layers of inauthenticity hide from ourselves and often from others, and thus contribute to the collective delusion. They hide from ourselves this very deeply rooted, I say fundamental, it's not the most fundamental, but it's the most fundamental to the sense of separate self, to the ego structure, to the illusory self structure. This fundamental sense of things just aren't right. Something is not right. Something's not okay. Now, when we become aware of this, it can be a hard pill to swallow, because we know that most of the people, if not all of the people we've come in contact with, those who are supposed to be our closest allies, those who taught us what it means to be a person, those who taught us to emote, the supposed experts out there who show us how to make ourselves feel better, how to succeed, how to have good relationships. We see that they're all also functioning out of this fundamental sense that something's wrong. And of course, that is very daunting. It's very scary. It's very isolating. So this feeling of isolation that's ubiquitous among humans comes not only from the illusory sense of separation, of being a separate, distinct entity, of being apart from everything. It also comes from the socially reinforced, but not overtly stated sense that you're kind of alone in this world to try to find a way to make yourself happy internally and externally in relationships, vocation, and so forth. So all this can sound really uncomfortable. And there are many people, I think, who want to live in that delusion, genuinely. Not judging, but I have had people literally say that. They don't want to peek behind the curtain. They don't want to face that fundamental sense that something may be very wrong, but rather just live in the dream as best they can. But others can't do that. I couldn't do that. It was just too painful. I couldn't ignore it. I couldn't ignore the fundamental sense that something was wrong. I couldn't ignore the suffering, the unease. I couldn't ignore the fact that most people, if not all people I'd come in contact with, who seemed to portray that they knew how to be happy, be satisfied, have good relationships, didn't appear to be deeply satisfied to me at all. In fact, they appeared to be functioning, in one sense, from the same basis of self-experience that I was functioning from. So I sensed inauthenticity everywhere, including in myself. including what I had learned about how to be a human. So what do you do? What do you do when you recognize all this? Well, it's really good news if you're interested in waking up. If you're interested in the awakening, unbinding process. If you're interested in being liberated from the fundamental delusions that create and keep the sense of separate self, seeking self, struggling self alive. If you're interested in going to the root of all of this, the quote-unquote problem of being a person, the first noble truth of Buddhism, life is suffering. If you're interested in getting to the bottom of this, and at the same time that you feel that fundamental sense of something's not right, you also sense somewhere, even if it's very vague or subtle, an even more fundamental sense that it doesn't have to be that way. That's really good news. If you can perceive both of those. Faith in the realization process, or in something, the Dharma, maybe it's God, maybe it's just that you don't have to suffer. Faith in that, and a genuine, authentic acknowledgement that what you've learned, how you've learned to be, how you've learned to process, is fundamentally unsatisfactory. It's not comfortable. That is the magic combination for waking up from the dream of separation, or at least starting that process of unbinding. So there are many ways to take up a journey, many ways to take up the hero's journey. But this is the true hero's journey from the archetypal framework. This is to go completely and absolutely beyond what you take yourself to be. To find out what's holding all of this illusion together, if anything. To get to the mechanics of the illusion of separation, struggle, grasping, clinging, pushing, pulling, and ultimately to find an end to all of it. Doesn't that sound fun? Doesn't that sound like kind of the whole point of why we might even be here in the first place? There are a lot of purposes and important aspects to life, relationship, vocation, all of it. I'm not saying none of that's important. I'm saying all of it's important. But once you sense this, you see there's nothing as important as this. This has to take priority in one way or another in your life. At some point, you'll arrive at that conclusion. And it's a heart level commitment, meaning it doesn't have to look a certain way. Don't let anyone convince you have to meditate 19 hours a day, or join this group or that group, or have this teacher or that teacher, or know all the perfect descriptions of the stages of enlightenment. That's not what I mean. It's a heart level commitment. And it will look different for you than it does for anyone else. But you know it. So acknowledge it, and then give yourself to it. Give yourself to it. When you give yourself to it, you realize spirituality, awakening, realization, liberation, they're not somewhere else. You know damn well they're right here. So everything that you have to come into contact with that is an apparent barrier to those living truths, those ineffable truths, is also right here. Every emotion, every perception, every distortion, every fixation, every tendency is right here. It's great news. You carry it around with you. You don't have to travel thousands of miles to some temple to find an enlightened teacher. Just look at what's right in front of you. Feel what's right inside of you. Listen. Hear. Hear just that sound. Feel just those sensations. The best teacher you'll ever find is right here. When you give yourself fully to this process of unbinding. And it starts by moving beyond thoughts and beliefs, including thoughts and beliefs about spirituality, Buddhism, Hinduism, Advaita, thoughts and beliefs about anything you've heard on the internet, including that there's no one that can walk this path, there's no one that can practice. Those are thoughts, they're beliefs. Don't let people convince you of that stuff. Get on it. It's right here for you. As Dogen says, in one way or another. Just get the job done. Don't hesitate. Don't waste time. Don't put it aside. You can do it while you do everything else. You don't have to put anything aside. Again, it's a heart level commitment.